Have you ever met a man in your life that when you met them, they were nice, they were kind, they didn't ruffle any feathers, you actually kind of liked being around them? Maybe they were fun, maybe you enjoyed drinking with them or doing fun activities, or even just going to places or just generally being around them, and you sought some advice for them. But for some reason, there was something about this man that you spent time with that you didn't necessarily feel safe with. You didn't necessarily trust them. You didn't necessarily want to do business with them. You didn't necessarily feel like they were somebody that you could rely on. A lot of my life, I've met a lot of these men, and I didn't know what was going on. There was something about them that made me feel like something was off, like I couldn't respect them. There was something about that individual that I just didn't want to give them money, or I didn't want to start businesses with them, or I didn't want to do anything that required a lot of energy and attention with those people. And I didn't know why. For the longest time, I had no idea. There was this amorphous kind of feeling of, why don't I trust this person? I like them, but why don't I respect them, or why don't I trust them? And it took me a long time to figure out what was actually going on. And I heard this term online, which I think was kind of funny when I heard it. But it's this idea of being a man-child. What is a man-child? We point to different figureheads that people say, oh, that's a man-child. Particularly women will have this vindictive word that they use to describe certain men. And I didn't understand what they meant. I thought maybe they meant a man that was complaining or was emotional or was needy. But going deeper into exploring the relationships that I had with men from like a business level as well as a friendship level, it helped me realize what exactly they were talking about. And it gets even deeper. This is, in my opinion, the definition of the difference between a boy and a man. There's three different things that I've observed. It's responsibility, it's reliability, and it's accountability. All of those things a boy is not capable of doing necessarily. A boy doesn't necessarily feel responsible for his actions because a boy is exploring. He's trying to understand what works. He's trying to understand what doesn't work. And if they make mistakes, they make mistakes. It's part of the learning process. But they don't have this pressure to be accountable for their mistakes, which steps into my next part about the difference between a boy and a man, is accountability, right? Your ability to own up to the problems that you've caused. You have to be responsible and accountable. And the last one is reliable. So they all tie hand in hand together. If you are responsible, that means that you're also accountable. They're one and the same. And if you're also responsible, that means you have to be reliable. You can be responsible for the well-being of a family or of a child or of a business, but if you're not reliable, then the business is going to fall apart. And if you're not accountable, then the business is going to fall apart. All of these work hand in hand. And the challenge that I see a lot of man-children experiencing is that they will want to run away from their problems. They'll want to go on vacations. They'll want to sleep with women to relieve stress. They'll want to do drugs or do anything that will distract their brains or their minds from taking accountability for what is happening right now. And when I actually met and worked with men that took full responsibility for their shortcomings, took full responsibility for their mistakes, and were reliable and actually took time to make up for those shortcomings, that was when I felt a deeper sense of safety and security. I actually wanted to invest money into them. I actually wanted to invest time into them. And I realized that I didn't understand why I didn't feel safe with those men in the first place, because I actually wasn't embodying those principles. I wasn't being accountable for the times that I needed to be accountable. I wasn't being accountable for the reason why I was out of shape. I wasn't being accountable for the reason why I was tired, or I was overeating, or I was indulging in pornography or things that were destroying my body. I wasn't actually being accountable and saying, I messed up. I'm doing these things, and I have to suffer as a result of my short-sightedness. And owning up to those facts and embracing that I wasn't the one making responsibilities, taking the choices, right? And it's really come to a full head to really understanding the implications of what these three things mean by running a big business and by being around people that are embodying those things, but also falling into the habit of not wanting to embody those things. Because when you have people that invest into you, when you have people that invest into your story, when they have people that invest into your business or your service, you have to be reliable. You have to be accountable. You have to. You have no other option. And it's not scary. It's not bad. It's not even, how do I describe it? I feel like when somebody says they have to do something or they're required to do something, there's this pressure, there's this fear that comes from, if I don't do this, then I'm a failure. If I don't do this, then I'm going to lose respect or love. And in some respects, yeah, you could become a failure. You could lose respect. You could lose friendships. But the way that I've shifted this framework around my brain is that it's an honor and a duty and fun to take responsibility. It's an honor and a duty and fun to be accountable, because it creates this positive momentum in my life that makes me want to be a better person, that makes me want to be more responsible, that finds joy and love and meaning and purpose and foundation in being reliable, accountable, and responsible. And currently right now I'm in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have never thought in my life that I would be able to go to a country like this. And eventually I'm going to make a video on what being in Eastern Europe has taught me, because wow, is it a completely different reality. And something about what I've realized in this country is that there's very, very strong gender roles. There's very strong, I am man, you're a woman, what is wrong, what is the problem? And it's completely different from being in the Western world, because there's a sense of confusion as to around identity and who am I, and oh my gosh. And here it's very clear cut. And when I look around, I'm like, man, these are like real men. They're strong, there's no BS, they are tough, they are stern, they are consistent, they're reliable, because of that very strong pull towards being a masculine man, is that you have to be reliable. They still follow very strict gender roles. They still follow very strong traditional roles. And if you're not being accountable, if you're not being responsible, if you're not being reliable, the guys that you're going to be around, they will absolutely lose respect for you. They will absolutely ostracize you from their group, from their circle, from their business. Women, they won't date you. They won't respect you. Nothing. They won't do that. And in the Western world, in a way, we're sort of encouraged to be man whores, or we're sort of encouraged to be boyish, or we're sort of encouraged to prolong our immaturity because adulting is scary. You know, even that's a millennial term, like, oh, adulting, I'm adulting. I honestly think that the term adulting is ridiculous, because really the only difference between adulting and being a child is basically being responsible, being accountable, and being reliable. That's it. And it's so interesting being around this type of energy, because that, to even ask these kinds of questions of, can I be responsible? Can I be accountable? Can I be reliable? It's ridiculous to even think that the possibility of an adult man couldn't be responsible or couldn't be reliable or couldn't be accountable. That's not even within their vocabulary here. You will not survive. You will not thrive. You will be completely ostracized from society if you aren't those things. You don't have an option unless you want to be a complete outsider. And man, am I learning a lot from that. But to juxtapose my experiences from people being in the West and being man children versus people that actually are adults and are taking responsibility for their everyday lives, it's like night and day. It's like night and day. And I'm willing to bet that the reason why you're broke, the reason why you haven't made a lot of money, the reason why women aren't attracted to you, the reason why people don't respect you is probably something to do with the fact that you're not taking accountability. You're not being reliable. You're not being responsible. You're blame shifting. You know, if you say something that offends somebody and you brush it off as, oh, you're stupid, or that doesn't matter, or that's not important, guess what? You're not being accountable for something that you did. And people are going to disrespect you for that. They're going to be like, wow, you really offended me. You really did something wrong. And the fact that you're not being accountable for doing that makes me disrespect you. And when you look at it from that framework, it's so obvious. And yet, I think that the Western world has cultivated this subtle way of making men not be responsible. And I guarantee you, when you actually look in the mirror and you look at the man that you see in the mirror and you say, I'm going to be accountable and responsible for all of my actions, always, all the time, you'll start to trust yourself. You'll start to look at difficult situations as an opportunity to grow. You'll start to look at situations in your life that once scared you as something that excites you. You're no longer running away from anything. You're embracing life. I've met men that have had children that they've ran away from, that they don't talk to, that they'll live remotely from, that they've made a decision in their life to have to have a child, and yet they don't engage themselves emotionally or mentally or spiritually in their child's life. That's an irresponsible man. That's a man that is going to damage their children, because they're going to see that you, and they're going to say, okay, men that I need to relate to are irresponsible, they're immature, they're unaccountable, they're not somebody that they can be relied on. And then guess what? They're going to date men that continue the same pattern, then continue the same cycle. And they're going to instill, probably unconsciously, the values that they learned from their father into their children. And they're going to date men that are like that. And they're going to live in this amorphous, nebulous fear of, why don't I actually feel like I can relax? Why don't I actually feel like I can just be myself? Because if you're surrounding yourself with people that don't take accountability, that are not reliable, that are not responsible, you will always feel unsafe. You'll always feel unsafe with your money. You'll always feel unsafe with your physical safety, with your emotional safety, with your spiritual safety, because they don't feel safe with themselves, because they're afraid of their own power. And when I finally got that, being accountable, being reliable, being responsible is such a joy, it's such an honor. The way in which people related to me completely shifted. People started to ask me to do some very serious things. I had somebody ask me that didn't have any children, would you mind managing my estate when I pass away? Would you mind helping transfer money from this place to this place? And I didn't necessarily do anything. It's not like I was going around announcing to people that, hey, I'm this responsible person, you can rely on me. I wasn't interested in being seen as this special person. I just saw the value in doing it for myself, and then through my actions, other people recognize it as well. And then I ask people, I'm like, why? I'm just curious. I'm not interested in stroking my ego or anything. Why did you feel like you could rely on me? Why did you ask me as opposed to anybody else? And a lot of other people that asked me these questions told me, because I trust you, because you're responsible, because I know that you're going to keep my best interest at heart. And this is one thing that I really, really appreciated about what my father taught me, that only until my 30s I really started to understand. My father passed away 2 years ago, and one of the things that people said to him time and time again was that he was an extremely responsible, honest man, almost to a fault. And it kind of made me laugh that, I remember one time I wanted to get my dad to sign a document for me because I was in a different country, and it just simply was totally impractical for me to do that. And my dad refused to do it because it was unethical, because it was wrong, because it wasn't honest. And that integrity that he had, that accountability that he had, allowed him access to manage billions of dollars of assets from very wealthy people because he had that rock solid integrity. And one of my mentors that I met owns like 40% of one of the national banks in Ecuador, where I live, and has tons of assets. He's a Singaporean guy. His name is Alan, and a very, very, very successful person. Super, super humble, very quiet. You would never know if you met him. He's a very unassuming, tiny little Asian man. And I said, Alan, how were you able to get into this position of success and respect and network? And he said, because I had rock solid integrity and I was accountable and reliable, and people trusted me because I kept their best interests at heart. And when somebody is given a lot of responsibility, they are expected to really step up, to really actually stay in full integrity with their ethics and their morals. And if you want to do anything great in your life, you won't be given access to be able to do those things unless energetically you can prove to yourself that you're able to be responsible and accountable and reliable. And Alan was able to unlock worlds of potential by meeting nations, heads of states, and major financial institution managers and hedge fund managers and big business magnates, because he had rock solid integrity, because he was trustworthy and reliable and kept other people's well-being in his mind. In my opinion, the difference between a boy and a man is that a man will take on the responsibilities of other people, not because it's making it about him or that he thinks he's some special person. It's because he has the capacity to, and realizes that we are only as strong as our weakest link in the chain. And if a man has a capacity to be able to carry other people if they can't carry themselves, it's his honor and his duty to do so. Because as a man, that's what you need to do for a family. You can't expect your kid to go work. You can't expect your kid to pay bills on time. You have to carry that weakest link during their journey to stepping into being a responsible adult. So I ask you guys to really reflect in your life where you're not being accountable, where you're not being responsible, where you're not being reliable. Because all of those things are going to make a world of difference in your health, in your relationships, in your finances, and ultimately in your fulfillment. Because you will not be able to unlock your fullest potential if you don't embrace those facets of your life. You will always live as a man-child. You will always be running away from your problems. You won't really actually be able to have a real relationship. You'll probably run away from a family. You probably won't, if you do have children, your children won't ever look up to you or respect you, because there's something deep down inside of them that says, even though I love my father, even though he's maybe a good man, I don't trust or respect him. And it is painful to not be trusted or respected as a man. And this is what you need to do in order to unlock the things that your soul craves as a man. Let me tell you, man. And it might take some time. And it might take some inner journey and inner reflection. But I can assure you this: you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror and be able to be safe with the man that you see if you embrace these facets of your life. And if you're struggling to embrace these facets of your life, generally the only way that you're going to be able to embrace these things from a way that doesn't feel like you're being jerked around or go through these very painful, dramatic breakups or business losses or losing tons of money is to be around other men that are living in accountability, that are seeing the value in being that strong, accountable, reliable, actualized man. To get that feedback, to get that mirror, so that you don't have to go through that painful experience. And that's what I offer. I offer these open groups where people can come and have discussions and accountability and learn and grow from men that are living their highest purpose. But I also offer paid mentorship, because I realize that having a nice discussion with a bunch of people that you don't really know isn't necessarily always going to help fulfill exactly the challenges that you're going through. And I realized that life is meant to be lived. Life is meant to be truly embraced to its highest potential. And I want that for you. I want that for everybody that watches my content. I want that for every man on the planet, actually, because the men that are living to their highest good make the world a better place. And I don't want to live in a shit place. I don't want to live in a world where I don't feel safe with the people that I'm around, because people don't want to take responsible. They don't want to be responsible, and they don't want to be man children. I don't think you want that either, man. So I have links in the bio where you can join the free weekly call. Currently I'm traveling now, so I'm not sure how consistent it will be at the moment, but the paid mentorships definitely are very consistent if you decide to go through that route, which I encourage you to do. So thank you guys so much, and I'll see you there.